What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Shoot the Gap, the IDP Fantasy Football podcast here at Fantasy and Frames. We're here for week 11. JT, man, this season is going by way too fast. Wouldn't you agree there?
Yeah, it's crazy to think all the offseason work, everything we did, trying to get in the season, trying to figure out what's going on, who's playing where, what guys you want to have, who you want to add. And man, we're just fantasy playoffs are a couple weeks away. I've got a couple leagues that start fantasy playoffs in week 12 because they're bigger leagues. So they start the playoff pool early. So, I mean, it's right around the corner here for quite a few leagues. I know I have a couple that I'm like, scrambling. I need to win one or two more games to try to solidify a playoff spot. And if you play college fantasy football, like One Foot Down podcast, college fantasy football playoffs start this week already. So it's, I mean, we're there. It's been a really fast season.
Well, let's help people get through week 11 before we start talking about fantasy playoffs.
That's right. We got to build. Don't look too far ahead, right?
And we'll be back to help you in a few seconds. So again, apologies, folks. We were running a little bit behind today. Totally my mistake, and apologize to you, JT. But we are here. We got Jamie in the chat already. Shoot the gap, fire emoji. Darn right, fire emoji. That's how we roll here. Anywho,
Jamie.
Hope everybody out there is doing well. JT, man, how have you been in general?
Oh, I'm doing good, man. Just like I said, the things are getting a little crazy here. I got my football season done with my son, my tackle football season. Now we're in flag football. Our flag football season goes fast. We won the first round of the play. We had to win our last game against an undefeated team to get into the playoffs last Saturday. We won, got into the playoffs. Playoff first round Monday night. Our team came out. Kids played great. We played a team that we tied during the regular season. We smoked them. We came out, put up 50 plus. The kids played great. Tomorrow night, semifinals. We're the defending champions in this league. So semifinals, we're playing the team we beat in the championship game on the last score of the game. We played in the first game of the season this year and lost on the last score of the game. So it's going to be a barn burner. It's going to be a really fun game. So in the mix of all the watching real life football, playing fantasy football, also still coaching. So yeah, trying to hopefully bring home another championship. If we win tomorrow, Thursday, we'll play the championship on Saturday. My son's birthday is on Friday. We won the championship on his birthday last year. He was super pumped. It was that night. It was his actual birthday. We won the championship. So hopefully trying to do it 2 years in a row.
Well, first of all, happy early birthday to your son. That's awesome. And hopefully, that would be quite the story to tell one day on back-to-back birthdays, bringing home championships for flag football. That's fantastic.
Yeah, and Jorge for his birthday, proud dad moment. He's had nothing but comic book characters and superheroes in his room since he was, 2-3 years old, and he picked his room and like putting all this stuff up. He decided he's going to junior high next year, decided he wanted to redo his room for his birthday this year, went all Colts, went all football. Super proud. We spent the whole day today redoing his room while he was gone, and excited for him to see it. My mom came over and we redesigned the room, put up all kinds of Colts pictures, Jonathan Taylor, AR. Glad to see AR starting this week again as we put up a bunch of pictures for him. And I was just thinking, I was like, man, I really hope AR gets back in there because we got all this AR stuff and JT stuff on his wall. So proud dad moment, as I'm a Colts season ticket holder and he's gone to a bunch of games with me. And now he is officially all in on sports. He loves sports. He loves football. It's his favorite sport. And now I've rubbed off on him. He said, well, you got a Jonathan Taylor signed helmet, the one right behind me. He's like, I want one. So my dad graciously went out and bought him one for birthday combined Christmas present. And we got it hung above his bed, right where he sleeps. You can see the helmet every night. So pretty awesome.
Dude, that is fantastic. That is, you love to see it. You love to see it. All right. So as we do every week, we go through our various segments, but we have a question here from
Offensive
Arturo.
question. I can answer it in the chat for you here.
Yep. So generally how it works here on Shoot the Gaps is we do talk about the defensive side of the ball. We keep to on-air questions and on-air content related to IDP, but we will answer your offense questions in the YouTube chat. So JT has got you there. So without further ado, let's get into some news and notes. Speaking of news and notes, I got some news I want to pass along and a note I wanted to give to one of our supporters. That's the word I'm looking for. Sorry, folks, it's late. Charlene Erickson always tunes in to our shows, whether it's the pregame show, kickoff show on Sunday mornings, or here on Shoot the Gap. And she asked us a question on the Sunday morning kickoff show, an IDP question. Who should I start out of X amount of players? And I thought to myself, okay, you should start this person, and that person. And she's like, fantastic. By the way, I'm taking you on in the Shoot the Gap podcast league this week. And I kid you not, like 3:30 p.m. on Sunday, she's up like 215 points because the scoring is bonkers. 215 points to my 67. And I'm just like, oh my God, this is like beyond like a beatdown. This is just embarrassing. Fortunately, I made it a little bit more respectable. She still handedly kicked my butt 229 to 211. But at least I made it a respectable performance. But I just wanted to say to you, Charlene, congratulations on a great hard-fought victory there. Yes. So, anywho,
smart lady, good move. You might as well go the expert, take him out. I like it. I like where she her head's at there.
I'm just surprised I didn't like put that together. Like I was like taking her on this week, but I'll be more mindful, Charlene, going forward. But just kidding there. Yeah, I won't be more mindful, but no. Yeah, I guess I will be more mindful. Anyhow, I'm rambling. Let's get into some news and notes. JT, how floored were you? Because I was pretty floored when Tyrell Dodson was automatic, like just out of nowhere, released by the Seattle Seahawks this week.
Yeah, I tell you what, this whole thing with Ernest Jones and then Dotson and just some of these teams like taking guys that are literally playing 100% of snaps, guys that you actually think are going to be part of these teams for a while, just
Right.
up and trading guys out of nowhere and then turning around and cutting guys that have literally been playing every down is just wild to me. That was very, very surprising that they just turned around and cut him. I mean, a really nice move by the Dolphins coming in and picking him up. We've been saying play Anthony Walker because he took over for David Long, and now all of a sudden I think they cut him, and now they turn around and cut him, and they added Dotson. So I mean, this is pretty wild that they just cut a guy that's literally played 100% of snaps out of nowhere.
I missed that. They cut Anthony Walker after the Dotson move? Or
No. Anthony Walker's on the team. They cut David Long.
No, yeah. Oh, yeah. I saw that. Well, you kind of saw the writing was on the wall with that when he started to see a decrease in snap percentages and Walker's playing time started to go up there. I'm curious as to what Walker's role will be going forward. He had a really good game. 9
He's
tackles.
Been solid the last couple of weeks. He was one of our plays last week. He's been good. You'd figure if Dodson can work his way in, that he would probably get in front of Walker there. I mean, he's a much younger player, but that's just it's kind of wild. I mean, some of these things you're wondering if there's like personality issues in the locker room or with coaches, or if teams just look at it and they just say, this guy's not our long-term plans. Let's cut bait right now, which to me, that seems crazy to do unless there's something really wrong going on to do it in the regular season. Like I can understand trying to move him after the season if something's not working out or you try to train him, but just to outright cut a guy who's been starting every game for you. And it's not like he's been bad. I mean, Dotson's good. So there's obviously something behind the scenes, but yeah, a couple moves this year have really shocked me in the NFL. I remember when no one traded basically everyone was on the team the whole year. No one made any moves, hardly ever. And now it's like, I mean, this they might as well be the NBA and Major League Baseball at this point. Just everybody making deadline moves, doing this. It's wild. I mean, I'm here for it. I love it. So I mean, I love to see all the extra moves, but it has definitely gotten crazy where these guys just sign a guy, play him, bam, he gets cut out of nowhere.
That's ridiculous. But we have to think about what's next on the list here for Seattle. Next guy up, Tyrese Knight. Playing next to Ernest Jones should be the case. And when he played in limited snaps earlier in the season, he was all right. I mean, he wasn't like a bona fide stud LB1, but like he was a good flex linebacker, LB3. Fantasy Pros IDP scoring, getting you in the low double digits, but still double digits nonetheless. It's a great opportunity for him. Obviously, the snap percentage is going to be
if he's a guy that's been sitting out there, he's a waiver wire pickup for sure. I mean, if you're in leagues, especially if you're in bigger dynasty best ball leagues where linebackers are just probably depleted in your league, he'd be a nice guy to go out there and grab now because he hasn't seen a lot of shares. So unless somebody drafted him or picked him up early, he's probably sitting there.
Speaking of depleted, man, it's a good thing that the Pittsburgh Steelers picked up via trade Preston Smith, or else that edge rushing would be.
You spoke right because when they signed him, I was like, a couple of my Steelers friends text me like, "What do you think? What do you think?" And I'm like, man, with the injuries they've had the last couple of years at outside linebacker / D end on the edge, I'm like, I want as many guys that can play as I can get. We've already seen Herbig get hurt, miss a bunch of games. Smith missed games earlier in the year. Now it looks like hopefully he's not out for a long time. They said it's not super serious injury, but he's still probably going to miss a couple games. I was like, perfect timing because Herbig's still not 100% yet either. So it's a perfect time for them to make that move. Really nice move by them.
Yeah, his playing time is going to go through the roof for them, at least obviously for this week, because they've already ruled out Highsmith against Baltimore. So that kind of tells you there. And that the second the move was made, I thought to myself the exact same thing you did. Like, this is like the best this is the best scenario for Pittsburgh as a team, like having somebody like Preston Smith being able to step in there and kind of like not miss a beat there with Highsmith going out. Or if it would have been Watt. Well, you can't replace TJ Watt, but at least for Highsmith in that regard. So if Preston Smith is available on your waiver wire for some reason, because he hadn't having a good year in Green Bay, just the scheme didn't fit his skill set, which is what he actually told the Green Bay management. He's like, look, obviously I don't fit this system. Could you send me someplace that would, utilize my skills better? And that place was Pittsburgh. And so here we go. Now's the opportunity. Doesn't really help that you're going against Lamar Jackson, trying to get him on the ground, but opportunity nonetheless. Going on with some more news. This was just embarrassing, and I apologize because I was very high on Damani Richardson the past couple of weeks just because he'd just been playing lights out with no Jordan Fuller back, and he was one of my plays last week. And I remember, I forget, was it Ruguru, one of the people in the chat, or somebody in the chat? Maybe it was Rob Thomas. I can't remember. One of you guys.
I think Summer asked about him, I think.
Summer, yes. Was it Summer? Yeah, it could have been Summer.
So I think pretty sure because Summer asked about him and asked about Tyke Smith. We discussed that last week, and you were big on him. I was big. I honestly went out and picked him up in a couple leagues, thinking that he was going to get a nice play. And man, that one just yanked the rug right out from under you. That was wild that he didn't even see a snap.
Yeah, and I believe somebody, I forget who it was in the chat, was like, well, what do you think is going to happen when Jordan Fuller comes back? I'm like, man, he's played himself into some snaps. He played himself into 0 snaps. Like, it was like he didn't even exist anymore. So if he's on your bench and Jordan Fuller's back to full health, which he should be, you can go ahead and safely drop him. A person that I'm scared to drop, but I can understand why you would drop, is Cameron Curl, because we saw last week Cameron Kitchens outsnapped Cam Curl 74% to 62% in terms of playing time. Him, Kitchens, and Quentin Lake, I feel like are a good safety tandem there that you can safely put into your lineups as defensive back, low defensive back twos, high threes. But again, it depends on like who you have on your roster, right? I'm not telling you like, well, if I have, insert player name that's better, then play the better player, obviously. But if you have them as your DB2 or DB3, I don't think you're hurting in that regard. You were pretty high on Kitchens coming in, and you're already talking in the offseason about him taking over for Cam Curl.
Yeah, so Kitchens was a guy I loved coming into the draft, and then when the Rams took him, I was like, man, I think he's going to work his way in. I thought he might see time a little earlier in the year, and now we're starting to see him work his way in there. He was, for me, the number 3 safety coming into this draft, this last draft class. I absolutely loved Kitchens. I thought he would be a guy that would work his way in this lineup and be a really productive player eventually. It's taken time, as it usually does for rookies, but I personally, for the future, I'd much rather have Kitchens than Curl. Now, Curl's given you some nice play this year. Lake has been the guy I've been really surprised about the way he's played, his production. He, started kind of in the slot corner, is moved more to deep safety. But even though he's been playing deep, he's still been putting up points. And Kitchens was the guy and I said this, I'm pretty sure when we talked about this early in the season, with them playing mostly one linebacker sets, I thought Kitchens would kind of play that up strong safety where they would let him kind of roam and make plays and kind of be an extra linebacker. So that's why I kind of liked him, even though he has played some deep safety. He's playing a little more close to the line. He's a guy, if you're in a dynasty league and you've got room on your bench, Kitchens is a guy I like a ton. I stash him. He's on a couple of my taxi squads in deeper leagues where I had room to stash a defensive guy, but I like him. I like him a lot. And hopefully his snap share keeps going over the rest of the season. But he's a guy I would definitely keep an eye on.
We got Christian in the chat. Yo, what's going on, Christian? How you doing? Welcome to Shoot the Gap. And of course, everybody who's asking questions, don't worry. Even though they're questions for offense, JT's got you in the chat as we keep the show to defensive side of the ball stuff. But you know what? Who knows? Maybe it's a late night for us. This is later than we normally start. So who knows how generous we'll be going forward. But thank you all for tuning in. I really appreciate that. And we notice a lot of you all are coming over from X. Just a heads up, we're on several social media channels, whether it's X, YouTube, Facebook. We're posting a lot more there. TikTok, we post pretty regularly there. Fantasy and Frames is joining the movement of having another social media account on Blue Sky. So we're everywhere is what I'm trying to tell you. So wherever you like to interact on social media, we don't discriminate. We're there. We like talking about fantasy football and making sure you all get the content and information you need to have fun playing fantasy football. So, just reach out to us wherever you feel comfortable, and we'll be happy to answer your questions or deliver you content. And that's all I got to say about that. For Chicago, Jaquan Brisker out again. Man, he's been dealing with a concussion for quite a few weeks here. And, it's been kind of ever since then the Kevin Byard and Elijah Hicks show, with both of them playing and doing pretty well for fantasy, for IDP Fantasy Football, for Fantasy Pros IDP scoring. That is, I'm not shocked that Kevin Byard. Kevin Byard's been around the NFL and been around fantasy circles for years. Back when he was in Tennessee, all those years there. How surprised are you that Elijah Hicks, however, is starting to become more and more fantasy relevant and viable? Or are you not drinking the Kool-Aid just yet?
I'm waiting to see on that. They had to get someone in there. I like Bird. The Brisker situation's got me worried. A guy that's been out this long, and it's basically been he can't pass the concussion protocol. I know I've talked about this at length in the past, but, they have basically – they do these tests when your mind is settled, right? See where your brain, chemistry, where everything's at. Then when you get a concussion, they test it and then they make sure it gets back to your normal level. He has not been able to get back to that normal level. Those are the things that are really worrisome. That's what Sidney Crosby in the NHL had for a while, where he was having the symptoms, concussion-like symptoms. He couldn't get back to normal for a while. This was the thing that they were worried about with Tua. Luckily for Tua, he went to the IR, but he actually passed the concussion protocol pretty quickly. So this is a rough one for Brisker that he's been at. It's been over a month now. This is the kind of thing that you get worried about his season being over and him having to do quite a bit of tests and go see some experts in the off season. Because when these things linger this long, everybody's brain handles the concussions differently and they don't always recover the same. And if he's having slow recovery time, this could be a long-term issue for Brisker, which I hate to see it. I love him. He's one of my favorite players. But yeah, it's definitely worrisome right now.
Philip in the chat here asking, does Tyrell Dodson, now that he's a Miami Dolphin, eventually take Anthony Walker's job? I would have to say so. Maybe not initially, but give it a couple weeks until he gets up to speed, and I definitely see that being the case. Is that outside the realm of possibility for you, JT, or are you?
Yeah,
sure?
I think it's going to happen. I mean, Walker's been playing solid since he got in there, but I absolutely can see Dodson taking this job. I think Walker's going to hold it at least for a week or two until he gets set. But man, once you start seeing that snap share swing, I think it could be over for Walker. So we'll see. Kind of keep an eye on that. Obviously, that's something you want to keep an eye on if you have Walker or Dodson. But to me, this is a move that if you're Miami, you're picking up Dodson because you're expecting that he's going to be in there and taking over for you.
And to piggyback off of what you were saying over Jaquan Brisker. And you made it a reference to Tua. What an idiot. Did you see him on Night Football where he went head first trying to tackle somebody and he almost got needed in the
Man, it's some guys just can't get out of their own way. It's they can't get out of their own way. You're like, man, just don't do that. Even if you give up the score, man, I know you want to play hard. I know you want to do that, but man, those are the things that you just look at and you're like, dude, what are you doing? Stop it. Don't do that. Don't do that. I know their coaches have told them over and over again, dude, get down, get out of the way. Don't let anybody hit you. Don't let anybody block you. They're telling him that. That's rough.
Yeah. I get it. You want to be tough and you want to make tackles and you want to, I don't even know why you want to make a tackle if you're a quarterback. Is and the nerve of him afterwards when they're asking him after the game's over and he's like, yeah, I just want to make a play. I'm like, you sit your ass down, okay? Come on, man, you got too much going for you, and you like to see the effort, but not from him. You know what I mean? There are other people that should be making that play, making that tackle, not the quarterback. Who's had concussion history for years now. Phillips back in the chat question. Drop Anthony Walker for Tyrese Knight in Dynasty. I have Dodson on my bench. I would make that move early.
Yeah, in Dynasty, unless you are right now, you're looking at it and you're going, I got to play Walker this week and I expect him to play. Unless you're desperate and you're having to play him, I'd much rather have Dodson and Knight. Especially in Dynasty for the future. Anthony Walker's been a nice little resurgence, but that's all it is. It's a nice little one for a couple weeks. I don't see him. I don't even know if he'll be the starter the rest of the season, to be honest with you. And I would assume not going forward, beyond 2024 season. I can't see him being a full-time starter again in this league, even though I really like him. Injuries have caught up to him. He's gotten older. He's just not a long-term asset you want to have in Dynasty.
He's definitely one of those redraft bye-week fill-ins if he has the snaps on his side.
I picked him up in a Dynasty league that I'm pretty deep. We don't have a lot, linebackers get eaten up immediately. I had him on my roster the last couple seasons, spent most of that time on the IR, dropped him this offseason, went and picked him back up because I had a couple injuries at linebacker these last couple weeks. Picked him up, played him. If his snap share drops next week or the week after, I'm going to drop him right back off my roster again.
No, I don't blame you 1 second. Okay, yeah, so that's going to do it for news and notes right now, and then let's get into one of our favorite segments, Money or Mirage. for those who are unaware, in this segment, we're gonna give you a statement, and you're gonna tell us whether or not that's a money statement, as in like, yeah, I see that happening, or it's a mirage statement, like, nah, you're crazy. You're crazy like Tua going for a tackle on an interception on Monday Night Football after being out for weeks for a concussion. I'm not going to let this go, JT. I can't let this go. I'm sorry, but whatever. Anywho, so let me throw one your way, JT, and I want your opinion if it's a money statement or a mirage statement. Jeremy Chin of the Washington Commanders has now had back-to-back performances using a Fantasy Pros IDP scoring now of 20 points or more on 24 total tackles, 1 pass deflection, an INT, and a fumble recovery. He should remain in your starting lineup rest of season. Is that a money or mirage statement for you?
For me, that's money. They're finally, Chin was a fade for me earlier in the year when we talked about him for a while. They just weren't using how we thought they were going to use him. It seems like he's finally settling in. They're using him the way they want to use him, the way, IDP managers are hoping he would get used. So for right now, for me, if he keeps on doing what he's doing, I think he's a play the rest of the year. We're finally seeing that Jeremy Chin from a couple years ago with the Panthers, that is in the mix, making plays, is being aggressive. When he was playing deep safety, kind of playing in the backfield, that is not Chin. That's not who he is. You need him playing near the line. We need him making plays. That's kind of what he's starting to do, and that's where he is super successful, because he's a guy that's, even though he's a defensive back, he's way better coming forward and making plays at the ball than he is dropping deep and trying to make plays. So I don't have a lot of Chin. I got rid of him when he kind of had his downfall, but it's been a nice resurgence the last couple of weeks for him.
Yeah, he's last week he played 51.3% in the box on a 98% snap share. Basically 99%, 98.7. Yeah, I'm with you. I think this is a money statement. The tackle numbers, just the play on the field. Now part of me wonders whether this is a result of taking on a run heavy team in Pittsburgh and then needing some help making tackles, especially against the run versus Najee and Jalen Warren. But when you're in an area of the field that much during a game, like, you have to be able to walk away with a solid floor, at least for fantasy purposes. So I'm with you there. All right, next one, money or mirage? Nick Bonito of the Denver Broncos now has 7 sacks on the season and is playing a majority of the time next to Jonathan Cooper now that Baron Browning has been traded to the Arizona Cardinals. However, he hasn't had any major blow-up games, like to have you have double-digit fantasy points using Fantasy Pros IDP scoring. It's been steady. A lot of 9.5s. A lot of 9.5s, 8.9s. That being the case, money mirage, he should only be flexed going forward the rest of the season.
Yeah, I've been using Benito in a few leagues, either in a flex or in leagues where I get a pretty decent amount of points for sacks, and I'm been a little short on a DN. I'll start him from week to week. I got one league where I have like him, Judon, and Quiddy Pay. So that's a good example. So I have TJ on one side. So TJ, this is on a My Fantasy league, so TJ counts as a defensive end. So I'll start TJ, and then like week to week, I'm like looking at these guys every week. And you know what? I'm pretty loaded everywhere else. Benito's been a really solid start. Like he's getting you sacks. Now, he's not getting you a lot more, than just a sack. But I tell you what, this Denver defense has really improved. The one thing with Benito is you're like, man, he's just not getting a ton of snap share, but it hasn't mattered. He's getting a sack with 50, 55% snap share, and he's been doing it all year. So it's like if he did it like one game or 2 games, you're like, okay, well, he got lucky in those games, but he's been consistently doing it, and they're bringing pressure. And with the offense playing a much, much better behind Bo Nix, a total miss for me, as I did not see it in Bo Nix, but he's been really good. I think Benito's a play, especially if you're in a league that has pretty good points for sacks. Now, if you're in a league that only has like 1.5 points for a sack or like a point per sack, like try to find someone else who can give you a few more tackles if it's a more tackle heavy league. But yeah, if you're in a league where you get 3, 4, 5 points for a sack and you're like, hey, I just need something, he's been solid. He's definitely a guy. I'm weird because I don't like to play DNs in my flex spots. If I don't have to, I'd much rather play a linebacker or like
Right.
a box safety in my flex spot. But he is a good guy if you're worried there for that. But I think Benito has shown enough this season that he's worth putting in your lineup the rest of the year.
So he's more of instead of a flex, he's more of a bye week fill-in. I guess that should probably be the.
Well, I also think I think he's startable if you're in a league that has to start like 2 defensive ends and you don't have a deep defensive end group. Like I said, my thing is like if I'm looking at him like a couple of situations I'm in, Benito, like Kwity Paye, Judon, and the way Judon's played and the way that Kwity Paye has played this year, in that type of situation, I'm starting Benito. over those guys. It's just the way he's played this year. So I like Benito. And like I said, he's not a like smash start for me by any means. But if you are in that group where you have a couple questionable guys or just, haven't produced a lot or getting a sack here and there, Benito's proven that he can get you one. So I definitely like Benito, especially in high sack leagues, because he's not going to get you the tackles, but he's going to get you a sack.
Well, we saw last week his first game without Baron Browning taking snaps away from him. He played 66% of the time to Jonathan Cooper 70. However, it was Benito with the higher win rate and pass pressure rate, both at 25%. So, and we talk about efficiency a lot. And look, the more playing time you get, generally your efficiency tends to go down. But even if it went from 25 to, the teens, that's still super elite. And speaking of super elite, we got Christian who asked an offense question and then just chimed in here with a defensive statement. Benito is elite. He's playing elite. It's just like JT was saying, in leagues where you get really big points for sacks, he's definitely somebody to insert into your lineup. If you're hoping for more of a higher floor because of tackle upside, you're not getting that. At least not yet. But I digress. We got Season joining us. Sup, guys? Sup with you, man? Or girl? Or person? Season, I guess I should say. Speaking of that, Season, what is your favorite season? Since you have that in your name, I'm just curious. Is it the fall because football, or is it other parts of the year? I don't know why I'm asking. It's just for some reason I see your name and I'm like, I'm curious now. Anywho.
Sometimes I look at the people's names and I'm like, I'm thinking, I read that and think totally different than what they probably thought when they made that. Sometimes I do that. I'm looking at that. I'm like, oh, that probably means that. And I'm like, oh, that's not what that is. Okay. Yeah. Sometimes I do that.
Yeah. And then it's like, well, what if he doesn't mean like a weather season? What if it's more like seasoning, like they put on food? And then I'm like, wow, Samsonite, I was way off. Anywho, I digress. Next and last Money Mirage question of the day. Jared Verse has been tearing it up lately, and of course, for the majority of the season, over the past 3 games, he's had 3.5 sacks, 7 solo tackles, 4 assisted, and 5 tackles for a loss. Money Mirage, you can safely, not on the bye week fill-in, but you can safely leave him in your lineups at DL going forward the rest of the season. Is that a money or Mirage statement?
I think that's a money statement. I like what Verse has done all year. I think he's been picking it up as he's gone. And you see the production is there lately, and this Rams defense is actually pretty good. So I like what they've got up front. It's not like he's the only guy putting pressure on. So it's not like teams are like, oh, he's their guy. He's getting double teamed. He's getting chipped everywhere because they've got too many other guys that are playing well right now. I really like this Rams defensive front. I wasn't 100% sure what I was going to feel about them, but I really like kind of what they've done with this group, with Aaron Donald being gone, what they've kind of been able to put together. I like Verse, man. Verse, especially in Dynasty, he's a guy you should be all over right now or trying to get if you can get him. But even Redraft, he's playable. I like Verse. For me, if I have him, he's probably the only rookie of those first round guys that I'm playing every week. The rest of those guys, I'm still worried about them. Liatu, Dallas Turner, those guys, I mean, they're bye week fill-ins for me, or if somebody gets injured. Verse right now is the only guy that I feel confident I would play him I would play him every week.
100% of the time agree. That is a money statement there. Jared Verse this past Monday, 15.4% win rate, 19.2% pressure rate. The guy is making a case for Defensive Rookie of the Year, hands down. All right, that's going to do it for Money Mirage. Now let's get to the part of this episode where, let's face it, this is what you're tuning in for. You want to know who you're playing in Week 11? Let's talk about some IDP plays and fades. All right, JT, we're talking plays and fades. What are we thinking here for, let's start at the linebacker position. Okay, who's your play at linebacker?
So my play this week, and this one's a little bit different because he's gotten quite a bit of hate this season, and that's Patrick Queen for the Steelers. It started off at the beginning of the year, people kind of ripping him. Everyone's like, oh, like, man, they spent all that money on him, and he's terrible. And look at, his PFF grade, and he's not making any plays. He's not making any tackles. Got off to kind of a slow start, and he's had some up and down games. So I'm not saying that, he has been fantastic by any means. But he's coming off 8 tackle game against the Giants before the bye week. He had a down game against the Jets in week 7, but he was really solid in weeks 5 and 6, getting 9 tackles and 13 tackles in those 2 games as he scored double-digit fantasy points in Fantasy Pro scoring. So after that, last week against Washington, and he's basically played 100% of snaps this year. Last week against Washington, he was a top 17 linebacker for Fantasy Pro scoring, 6 solo tackles, 1 assist, 1 pass defense. And now you get him going against his old team, the Baltimore Ravens. This is contentious. Like when he left, they were real pissed that he left and went to the Steelers. And he glowingly was talking about Mike Tomlin, how he wanted to play for Mike Tomlin, how he felt like he was a Steelers type of player. And of course, Tomlin, was like, this is the guy that we love. These are the guys we want, this type of guy. And just kind of the love fest he said for the Steelers really ticked off a lot of the Ravens players. They were not happy. I mean, guys play for the rival. It happens all the time, but just kind of the way it broke up. And then there was some stories that came out this week about how Queen didn't think that the Ravens really wanted him back. Right. And that's kind of his feeling. He didn't feel like they really wanted to sign him. They kind of were like BSing it, but they had no intention of like really signing him. And I have to be honest, as a Steelers fan, he was like the guy I wanted on the Steelers in this offseason. That was the signing I wanted. I didn't think it was going to happen, but that's who I wanted. They struggled with injuries at inside linebacker last year. I was telling all the rest of the Steelers fans, I was like, man, if they could get Patrick Queen, I think he would just fit perfectly on the Steelers. Rough start of the season in some people's mind. I think he's played better than the statistics are showing, but I think he comes out and balls out this week. If you've been on the fence about playing Patrick Queen this year, if you're going to play him in a game, I want to play him in a game against his old teammates. It's not only the old teammates, but old rivalry. Steelers Ravens might be, I think they're the best rivalry in football right now. I think they're top 5 in the league for sure. This game has been just, absolute knockdown, drag out fight. I think Queen is going to come to play this week, and coming after what he did last week against the Commanders makes me even more confident that he comes to play and he brings it and puts a big IDP performance on. And him, obviously his first year on the Steelers, but the Steelers, I know they're going against Lamar, and he's been phenomenal this year. But, man, they've really played well against the Ravens and Lamar the last 10 games. I mean, they have owned this series of late. They've played really well against them. I think this is going to be an absolute great game. I want Patrick Queen in my lineup. I want the revenge factor. I think he has something to prove. I think he wants to come out and show the Ravens that they screwed up and that he made the right choice by going to the Steelers. So I'm all over Patrick Queen this week.
Yeah, this is the week to do it, right? At the end of the day, Junior Colson, we thought we were going to see him get an increase in snaps coming out of the bye. We saw him go down to 20% in the snaps this past week. So It really is Queen and Landon Roberts, and Queen is the guy. You got JJ here in the chat. Thanks for the show, guys. Right up my alley. Got to hit the hay though, so I'll listen to it in the AM. Yeah, if you want to listen to it, on YouTube, or if you are subscribed to the Fantasy and Frames podcast network on Spotify or Apple, this episode will be uploaded there as well. He does ask, so who do you want for the next 5 years? Ooh, I like this. Dallas's Overshone or Green Bay's Edgerrin Cooper. I know Quay Walker is going to be there being a thorn in the side of Edgerrin Cooper, at least for another 5 years. I don't know who else is going to challenge DeMarvion Overshone in Dallas at the linebacking position. So, not to mention, I'm a huge fan of Overshone, as I was ever since he came out of Texas. So, I'm going Overshone. JT, what about you?
I'm slightly leaning Cooper, though Overshone's looked really good lately. I like what he's done for the Cowboys. I like the draft capital of Cooper. I think the Packers like him a lot. I actually think he can exist with Quay Walker, or if something happens to Quay Walker, I could see him taking over. I do like Cooper. For me, over the next 5 years, I'm slightly leaning Cooper, but man, that's a great question because that is super close for me.
And so JJ, hopefully that helped confuse you, because you just basically got two different answers. And so hopefully you get something out of that.
We usually agree on a lot of things there, Jorge, but every once in a while, you can't give the people all the same thing. We gotta give both sides sometimes.
Let's see here. Jamie is saying here in the chat, I hear Jorge is facing the number one team in the Kings Classic IDP. Am I? I have to figure out. Oh, damn. Okay. So, yeah, Steve Hungarter, a.k.a. IDP Hunter, is number one there. I got to be honest with you, not my best showing for the Kings Classic, my first year in it. But you know what? There's still enough time to make a push for at least a playoff spot going forward. So yeah, it should be interesting situation there. Looking forward to taking on Steve. So thank you for instigating the war of words going forward for this week there, Jamie.
Good job, Jamie. That's the way to bring it up. I will just quick for everyone that's putting offensive questions in the chat. Please tell me as much info as you can. Tell me if it's redraft or dynasty, because some of these questions I'm getting, I'm like, the question is definitely going to be different, and my answer is going to be different if it's redraft or dynasty. So just let me know if it's redraft, dynasty, standard, half PPR, or full PPR. That will help me get a little more clarity on some of these trade questions you guys are giving me. Thanks you. I appreciate it very much. Keep them coming. I'll keep answering them in between me answering IDP questions as well.
All right. Thank you. See, folks, JT is a multitasker extraordinaire. We are definitely lucky to have him here in the Fantasy and Frames family. So you all just keep firing away with your questions. And then let me talk about a linebacker that I'm super high on this week. That is Diane Henley, Los Angeles Chargers versus Cincinnati. Week 10, LB, one with 13 tackles, 1 sack. The past 3 weeks, 24 solo tackles, 12 assists. Roquan Smith last week for the Baltimore Ravens put up 6 solo and 6 assists versus the Bengals for a total of 17.5 points. The Bengals traditionally don't give up a lot of points to the linebacking position, so that some people might say, well, then why are you recommending Henley if that's the case? And that's because Roquan plays a lot more snaps than Trenton Simpson, right? So it's really like one linebacker is going to benefit the most going against the Baltimore Ravens or the Cincinnati Bengals, excuse me. And we see Henley like 100% total defensive snap share, tackle efficiency, 21.8%, 12 tackles, all these stats courtesy of Pro Football Focus. The next linebacker on the team in terms of total defensive snap share is Denzel Perryman, who's only playing 52.7%. So there's your majority snap share. That's the guy who's going to get most of the work in terms of stopping the run. So yeah, give me Henley, the rookie or the second-year player out of Washington State, just playing lights out there. And while JT is answering some questions in the chat, before we get to his fade at the linebacking position, let me give you my fade. It's Kenneth Murray, Tennessee Titan versus the Minnesota Vikings this week. Ever since the trade for Ernest Jones, and we see Jerome Baker, who was traded to Tennessee from Seattle, he hasn't really been seeing the field, and it's been the Jack Gibbons show for the linebacking position in terms of tackles and fantasy points. And we've seen Kenneth Murray kind of take a step back in terms of production. We pull up his efficiency metrics just from last week. Jack Gibbons, 100% of total snaps, 25.9% tackle efficiency on 15 tackles. Kenneth Murray also playing 100% of snaps, but only 10.3% tackle efficiency with only 6 tackles. As long as Jerome Baker is not playing, I think this is Gibbons' linebacking core for fantasy purposes. So what does that mean? Unfortunately, the hot streak that Murray was having throughout the course of the season, that's come crashing down. So definitely fading Kenneth Murray this week, but feeling super confident with Diane Henley going forward in week 11. JT, if I could just stop you for a second, could you give us your linebacker fade?
Absolutely. I like both those calls by you. I like Henley for the Chargers for sure. Perryman. Without Junior Colson, I'm out on anybody. That's not Henley. I agree with you on that one. My fade, and this is let me tell you a little bit of context here on this fade, because it's going to be a little strange. And it's Frankie Louvu for the Washington Commanders. And here's why it's very iffy for me on him. He has been really good this year, but he's been really good this year when he gets a sack. He has been super, super boomer bust this year. So if you look at what he's been able to score this year, in the 6 games, he has not had any kind of sack whatsoever. He's averaging just 7.7 points in Fantasy Pro scoring, and he's only scored double digits in 1 game. And that was week 2 against the Giants, where he had 11 tackles. He's only scored double digits in 1 game where he didn't get a sack. Now, in the games where he has a sack, he's averaging 23.3 points a game. So he's only averaging about 6 tackles per game and 10 pass rush attempts per game. So that's where the boom or bust comes in with Louvu. If he gets the quarterback, he's going to get you a big week. He's going to get you a big week. When he doesn't, the tackle numbers just are not there for him, as he's averaging, like I said, 6 tackles is all he's averaging per game. So that's the toughie for him. So when I'm looking at him, coming into the season, a lot of people, you probably thought he was your LB 1 or 2. He's almost a little more of a flex play for me. And whether you going on for the boom or bust this week against the Eagles, for me, I think it's a tough one. Good offensive line, a good running game. They don't throw the ball a million times. I'm out on Louvu this week. So I'm not saying be out on for the whole season, but this week against the Eagles, he is probably a flex play for me. I am not starting him as my LB 1 or 2. And again, I'm really looking at week to week what sack numbers the other team, opposing team, is giving up and what they're giving up to linebackers. Because if he doesn't get that sack, he is just not producing for you, but he is a home run hitter. If he gets that sack, he is getting you he is hitting a home run for you. So that is the little bit, of the takeaway for Louvu there for me is you got to really figure out what the matchup is like for him, because it really is all or nothing for him this year.
Nicely done. Jamie. Okay. So I'm putting up a comment that Jamie's throwing in the chat because it's an inside joke, because at the Fantasy Football Expo this past August in Canton, Ohio, whenever I would see Jamie, whether it's across the street or right next to me or in an elevator, he always asked me the same question. Like, he could be like 2 blocks down. He's like, Jorge. And then he would ask, I'm heading to the strip club. Who's coming with me? And I'm like, oh my God, this is ridiculous. And he's still going strong with that. So you know what? I am not but I hope you do have a good time there, Jamie. Anywho, let's get to some defensive lineman plays. Look, this guy last year was one of those guys who we were talking about, like, man, if Bosa misses time or if Mac misses time, he's got it. He's got the it factor. And we saw like a couple boom games, and we also saw a couple bust games for him. But now we're seeing, when being asked to take on a more of a majority snap share, this guy is really starting to come into his own. And I'm really trying not to butcher his name because I always do it. Tuli Pelotu, damn it, almost. Edge
I do
rusher.
the same thing every time. I like catch myself and I pause and I relook at the letters of the order they go in, and I mess it up every time. Every time I say it, I just like to call him Thule because I'm like, all right, I could say that. His last name throws me off every time. But yeah, I do the same thing.
Maybe I should just create a nickname like Thule T or something. I don't know. That sounded kind of weird.
Love it. Let's just do it. Thule T. I like it.
Thule T. Last week in with Khalil Mack being out of the game, 83% total defensive snap share, 24% win rate, 24% tackle rate. Those are elite numbers. And we saw him have Fantasy Pros IDP scoring 19 points on 3 solos, 2 assists, 2 sacks. The week before, he had 4 solos, 1 assist, 2.5 sacks. And the week before that, he's got 2 solos and a sack. This guy is playing lights out, and his metrics and efficiency metrics are there. It's just a matter of opportunity. So if Mac is out this game, he is definitely my start of the week here going forward. Somebody who I'm out on this week and who's been tearing it up lately is Dante Fowler, and that's crazy. It's crazy for me to say that, for like being a Commanders fan and then being somebody who's watched him just utterly dominate other offensive lines, getting to the quarterback, getting those sacks. But like you were bringing up for tomorrow night's matchup, like these tackles for the Philadelphia Eagles, they don't give up sacks. They don't give up any type of sacks. Like they have gotten up like 2 sacks all season. They don't allow a lot of pressures. These are the best in the game right here, Lane Johnson and Jordan Mailata. Both of which are good to go tomorrow night. So, unfortunately, I'm not seeing this being a situation where Fowler's going to keep that hot streak going. If he does, folks, and if I'm wrong, you start him rest of the season, no questions asked. Because if he can get past these 2 tackles, nobody's stopping him. So this is really the litmus test. But we're talking about not being too far away from the fantasy playoffs. If you need a boom play, if you need a boom player and you're desperately trying to, get ahead of the curve here, okay, you can make the case for starting him. But if you're like, no, I want steady, I don't want to rock the boat, I'm in a good spot right now, find somebody with a better matchup, because this is definitely going to be a tough matchup for him going forward. Any thoughts on Fowler? Is that playing too scared, do you think, or do you think that's the way to go? Or what are your thoughts, JT?
Yeah, Fowler's been so good. It's like, man, when these guys get in these hot streaks, it's like you look at the matchup and you're like, man, it's not a great matchup, but the guy's been just on fire. Sometimes it's like, I just look at it and I'm like, I'm going against the odds. I know I probably shouldn't play this guy again this week. I know he's probably not going to do what he's been doing. It's a tough matchup, but sometimes I just roll the dice. But I'm one of those people, I have to be honest with you. If I'm playing blackjack, I always double down. I don't care if they're showing 20. I'm doubling down on 11. I don't care. I'm doing it every time. I'm one of those guys when I put in a sports bet, rarely am I cashing out. If anything else, I'm doubling down and taking a live bet to go on top of what I'm already doing. So I'm one of those guys, I'll roll the dice a little bit. So for me, if you are like, I'm riding the hot hand that Fowler's been, I wouldn't fault you for it at all. I mean, it doesn't seem like a good matchup, but man, he has just looked so good lately. If I play him and he doesn't do anything, honestly,
Right.
I wouldn't be mad at myself because I'd be like, hey, he's been on fire. But I also can say if you want to be a little more conservative and go, hey, I just don't see how he comes out with a big game, and you got somebody else that you think has a better matchup and has a chance to score, I can absolutely see you making that call. But it's so tough when you see that matchup. You're like, this is a terrible matchup for him. But when the guy's been hot, sometimes they play through the matchup.
No, you're right, and that's what made this a really tough fade call for me this week. But it's
but it's you're kind of in the same boat with me. Like I'm saying with Frankie Louvu. Louvu's been really good to me. I'm fading him on the matchup this week, which is tough to do because I say fade this week. If he gets a sack and scores you 20 points again, you're going to be like, why the hell did I sit him? He's been on fire, but again, you're playing odds there. You're hoping that it works out. But for me, it's a tough matchup against a team that doesn't throw the ball a ton. If the Eagles get up and the running game's working, we've seen what happens there. They're going to throw the ball 20 times, 22, 23, 4 times. They're not going to get a ton of chances to make sacks. And if you've got guys that are relying on sacks for their production as opposed to tackles, that's just a really, really tough play.
All right. We got Jamie in the chat here, not asking who wants to come with him to the strip club. Thank you for that, Jamie. Would you trade away Brian Burns in a 12-team IDP Superflex where you start 2 defensive linemen for a 3rd and a 4th? Is this redraft or dynasty? This is important to know. Well, a 3rd and 4th. This is dynasty. So obviously, okay, duh, Jorge. For a 3rd and a 4th. For a 3rd and a 4th for Brian Burns, I can't do that. I'd rather stick with Brian Burns and just utilize all the production he has left. What are your thoughts here?
Ooh, that's a toughie. That to me, oh man, that's so league specific. Because I got IDP leagues that are really high scoring, especially sack wise, and you'll see the top end guys go anywhere from like the very last pick of the first round to like early mid second round for the top end guys. But then I have other leagues that are slightly lower scoring, and you really won't see the top end guys coming off the board till probably mid to late 3rd round. And then you'll have guys sprinkled in like 4th, 5th round, and then everybody kind of goes a little bit later there and hammers the defensive guys like in the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th round. I have a couple leagues. I get some really good players in the 3rd and 4th, so I can understand wanting to make the trading and get those. But to me, man, it so depends on the scoring because Brian Burns in a few of my leagues would be worth a 1st round pick with the way he's playing, how young he is in Dynasty. That's a toughie. That's a toughie. I can see taking a 2nd and a 3rd for sure. 3rd and 4th is a little rough. Is it a 10-team league? Is it a 12-team league? I'm in an IDP 10. Okay, 12-team. Oh, there you go. I'm in a 10-team IDP league, and you'd be shocked at how much it changes a 3rd and 4th round picks on who you can get in that 3rd and 4th round compared to a 12-team league. I'm getting some absolute steals in the 3rd and 4th round, and I have no problem trading and getting picks because I know I can get really good players there. But then I'm in other leagues like, man, you really start getting thin by a 4th round. Man, that's a toughie. That's a toughie. I probably hold Burns, but your league a little bit better. If guys aren't really taking the first defensive guys off the board in a rookie draft until really like the 4th round, to me, then it might be worth the 3rd and the 4th for you there. But to me, that's a tough question because it's really league specific. Like I have a high scoring league that Brian Burns would absolutely be a 1st round pick. Like you'd have to get a 1st if you're trading him. But again, I have other leagues where a defensive player won't go off the board till the late 3rd, early 4th. So that's a good question there though, Jamie. I appreciate that one. I wish I could help you just a little bit more. It wasn't so back and forth. Everybody else in the chat, I'm trying to get you guys. I know we got a bunch of questions coming in. I will do my best to jump on a few of these.
Let's hold off on those questions really quickly and let's get through.
Yep. hammer through the rest of these. And if you guys are sticking around, try to stick around. Me and Jorge are going to hammer out the rest of our IDP stuff here, and then I'll try to, if I need to, I can finish up and try to get some of your questions answered here near the end of the show.
Not to mention, if you're over on the YouTube channel, please leave a comment, and JT will get to it. Your question, that is, or if you're on X, give him a message or tweet at him at JT Orange. He can definitely help you there. I may have to roll in a little bit, JT. So just a little FYI. That's why we want to get through some of these.
Yeah, I know you got Jorge's got the new baby, and so if you got to jump off, feel free, brother. I can always jump in and finish out the show with everybody if I need to. So you just let me know if you need to run.
Yeah, probably. Yep. Yep. I'm hearing it. So JT is going to take over the rest of the show, go over defensive linemen as far as defensive backs and our sack lunch for the week. And folks, if you have any questions, again, hit either of us up on Twitter. I'm at Jorge B. Edwards. He's at JT Orange. Put your comments in the YouTube chat. And if you could follow us on social media, we're now on Blue Sky, like mentioned earlier. We're everywhere. So give us a follow. We'll put out content, and we have been putting out content, and we will continue to put out content on all those channels so that you can have fun playing fantasy football. And in this case, IDP Fantasy Football. So that's it for me. JT, thank you very much, and I will see you all on the Sunday morning kickoff show.
Absolutely, no problem. All right, folks, here, I'll get back to the chat questions for everybody here. Jumping in here. Sorry about this. I'm trying to get caught back up. Real quickly, I'm going to run through the rest of the plays and fades here for you guys, and then I'll jump in and answer the rest of your questions here on the show. So let's jump into our D-line. So my play this week on D-line is DeForest Buckner from the Colts. He's going against the Jets this week. Buckner's come back from injury. He has been phenomenal since he got back. Had a pressure rate of 15.4% last week against the Bills. That's an outstanding pressure rate for a defensive tackle. For an interior guy, he had a pass rush rate of 90.3 per PFF. So that is fantastic as well. 8 tackles with 4 hurries and 1 QB hit against the Bills. Unbelievable numbers for an interior lineman. No sack for him. It was the first game this season he hasn't recorded a sack, but still was able to put up solid numbers even without the sack. He's got 14 pressures in the last 3 games since missing the 5 games that he was on the IR. Second in points per game and second in snaps per game is Buckner for all defensive tackles. So if you're in a My Fantasy League or an RSO league where you have to start a defensive tackle, start defensive tackle, Buckner is in there. He's a play all the way the rest of the year. He should be a top 1 or 2 play the rest of the season. He has been absolutely phenomenal. And then honestly, when he was out, Grover Stewart was great. Grover Stewart has mostly been a kind of a run stuffer. His career played really well without Buckner. And now that they're both back, they're both playing great. Buckner has been a top 10 defensive lineman play the last 3 weeks, averaging 14.6 points per game per Fantasy Pro scoring. He's got 3 sacks in those last 3 games. I'm loving this duo. Grover Stewart and DeForest Buckner the next couple weeks. They got the Jets, Lions, and Patriots. Really nice matchups for the interior rushers. I like those guys. So if you have in their lineup, absolutely get those guys in your lineup. My fade this week is Bryce Huff for the Eagles. He got a sack against the Commanders. You might look at the numbers and go, okay, maybe this guy's worth playing. Don't feed into it. He's a total mirage. He's got 2.5 sacks on the season. But this last game in Week 10, he only played 12 snaps, 12 total snaps with 11 of them coming on passing downs. That's only a 20% snap share. He's just getting absolute terrible deployment. He's lucky that he got the sack. Without the sack, he would have put up a big fat 0 for you. Don't feed into it. Bryce Huff is not a full-time guy for the Eagles. He's reverting to his old role for the Jets where he just comes in on some pass rushing downs and you're praying that he gets a sack. I'm not buying it. I'm out on Bryce Huff. I'm not going to do that. I'll give you my defensive backs here, and then we'll jump into everybody's questions and I'll answer everybody here. So my play this week is Kenny Moore, another Colts player going against the Jets. Kenny Moore has really started to step it up. 100% snap share. He's got 81% of his snaps coming in slot corner or in the box. So he's in there making plays. He's scored double-digit points the last 3 weeks, 14-8, 21-5, and 17 points in Fantasy Pro scoring. Big game-changing plays for Kenny Moore. He's got an interception. He has a fumble recovery return for a touchdown in the past 2 weeks. He's been a top 5 DB play in 3 of the past 5 weeks. I'm staying with Kenny Moore. He's back to the Kenny Moore we've seen in the past. If you're in a start cornerback league, he's absolutely a play. You've got to have him in at cornerback. I still think he's playable even in just a DB league. So I'm getting him in there in DB leagues for sure. My fade is Tyreek Stevenson for the Bears. Ever since the Hail Mary pass against Washington, things have gotten a little bit ugly for Tyreek. So we all kind of know what happened there. Chanting to the crowd, talking smack. They run the Hail Mary play. Jaden Daniels runs around, fires one up, deep ball, 52-yarder, touchdown. Unbelievable play. It gets into Diami Brown's hands. They end up winning, or Noah Brown, excuse me. Noah Brown catches the winning touchdown. Tyreek Stevenson's at fault. He's running around, messing around, yelling at the crowd. He runs in late on the play, tips the ball up. He's the one that jumps and hits it. Goes to Noah Brown. Noah Brown gets the score. Since that game, that was in week 9, the week 9 debacle, Stevenson scored 12 points last week or 2 weeks ago against the Cardinals. Still had 79% snap share, even though the coaching staff was not happy with him and they said he was going to lose some playing time. He did lose some playing time. But what I'm worried about is then in week 10, he came back and his snap share dropped to 57.8%. He had basically been 100% snap share the first 5 weeks of the season. Now he's at 57.8 for a cornerback. I don't want that at all. He's not even playing slot corner. He's on the outside. He had 5.3 points against the Patriots after the 12-8, the week averaging 12.8 the previous 2 games. Tyreek Stevens, a guy in cornerback leagues I've been playing a lot of. I'm out on him. I can't do it until I see something else happen with Tyreek. So he's going to be a fade for me. Snack lunch. Let's take a look at that. So for my snack lunch for this week, let's run it. Let's do a little graphic. So on the snack lunch segment here, me and Jorge pick one player to get a sack this week. He is taking Arden Key from Tennessee, who's been on an absolute tear lately. He's going against Demontre Jacobs, from the Patriots, who's been very bad this year. He's been giving up sacks left and right. Key's been hot. He's taking Key. I'm on Micah Parsons. Parsons for the Cowboys has been really good. Been hurt, came back, monster game last week, 2 sacks. Now he goes against the Texans. The Texans are giving up. CJ Stroud's been the second most sacked quarterback in the league this year. They've been all over CJ Stroud. I think Parsons gets to him, even though this Cowboys team is just a disaster right now. They're a mess. I think Parsons is able to get there and make the plays. He's my sack lunch for this week. So I will jump back here. Let me look through the chats. If you guys are still waiting around, I'll answer those. If you got more questions, throw them in here. I'll answer them as soon as I can. I type them in here, but with Jorge out, I'll just bring them up on the screen and tell you guys who to go with. So we got a question here from Jay Hang 20. Appreciate the question. He's saying, are you going to start Justin Herbert or CJ Stroud this week? This is a good question. These are guys I'd be looking at. For me, I like the Chargers matchup against the Bengals. The Bengals defense has given up a ton of points. They have not been great. I know the Cowboys defense has been a little weak as well, but again, people are getting home against CJ Stroud. It's been tough. I like CJ a lot, but for me at home, I'm taking the Chargers. I'm taking Herbert. I think Herbert has a big game against the Bengals, who've been in nothing but shootouts this year. So Jay Hank 20, that's who I'm going with. I'm going with Herbert over Stroud. See who else we got here in the chat. We got a question here. Mr. Matt says, Jacobs or Jones ROS the rest of the season. I'm not 100% sure what Jones you're bringing up there. I'm guessing you're saying Aaron Jones. If I'm wrong, hit me up here in the chat. Let me know. I'm taking Jacobs the rest of the year over Aaron Jones. I like what he's doing for the Packers. That would be my choice there, Mr. Magic, on that one. Phil V says, IDB question here. Are you going to take Nakobe Dean or Luvu? For me, this week, I'm on Dean. I'd have Dean over Luvu. Luvu was my fade this week. And the biggest problem with Luvu, like I mentioned before, is he's a sack guy. He's got to have a sack. If he doesn't get a sack against the Eagles, his numbers have not been there. I'm going to go with the floor of Dean. If you are in a sack-heavy league where you can get really big bonuses and you think Luvu might get home, he's the more home run hit, but you're swinging for the fences with Luvu. If you're looking for just a nice floor, I'm on to Kobe Dean for a floor. Philip V, thanks for the question there. Matt popping in here says 10-team redraft PPR with 2 flex spots. I've got some expendable assets in Tillman, Hopkins, Devontae Smith, Cook, and Irving. Who would you package to upgrade my flex starter? Thoughts on trade targets? All right, 10-teamer redraft PPR, 2 flex spots. Hopefully you can make some trades here. I always have insane difficulty making trades in my redraft leagues. Always seems like teams just do not want to do it unless they're in desperation mode. If you can find someone, man, here's what I would look to do. If you can find someone that'll give you a better asset because they got injuries or a little short-handed, you could probably try to package something like a Devontae Smith and a Bucky Irving, or maybe like a Tillman, Smith, and Irving, Cook. I'm guessing you're not talking about Dalvin Cook there. You're looking at the Bills Cook. Yeah, I would, if you could, depending on what you need, more running back or wide receiver to upgrade to a better flex spot there. I would try like a 2-for-1. Try a 2-for-1 or even a 3-for-1 deal. In a 10-team league, I'm always willing to give up a little bit more because there's usually more on the waiver wire in 10 teams compared to 12-team leagues. So for me, especially coming down the home stretch, looking for the playoffs and trying to go for the win and get past these bye weeks, I have no problem even overpaying a 3-for-1 in a redraft league. If you think your team's deep enough, or you think you can, you're not going to hopefully have to play anybody else, I have no problem making that move. Man, trade targets. Real question would be, who needs something? Who is a little short-handed and has a stud, and they could use a 3 guys to kind of help fill out their thing. You could maybe go after like a Tyreek Hill, who's been down this year. You could probably get him for not too much. CeeDee Lamb, people are getting desperate and worrying about CD and redraft with the quarterback situation with Cooper Rush. I do think he's still going to see a lot of targets this year, so I wouldn't have a problem getting Lamb. It's going to be up and down week to week, but they have no running game. They're going to have to throw the ball, and as long as CeeDee's healthy, I would expect him to be the main guy getting the targets in that offense for the Cowboys. So CeeDee's a guy I would maybe go after. Puka or Cooper Kupp are 2 guys you can look at. The injuries have mounted up. They're back now. Someone might be willing to move off those guys if they need a couple assets. Those would be the type of guys I kind of am going for. You're not going to probably get a stud and a guy that's been, that doesn't have a lot of worries. You're probably not going to get an AJ Brown. You're probably not going to get a Justin Jefferson. Those type of guys. Another guy that I would be interested in going and getting is Mike Evans. He's been hurt. If he gets back, this Tampa Bay offense is explosive. So that's a guy I would get. I would look for a Mike Evans. There's somebody that might be sitting on Mike Evans and just needs a guy to play these next 2 weeks, as it might be another week or so before Mike Evans is back. I wouldn't mind either moving, honestly, any of those players straight up for Mike Evans. I know a couple buddies have made trades for Mike Evans of late, because people are just ready to move off him in the redraft league. But I think Evans could be huge down the stretch. So, Matt, thank you there. I appreciate it. Thanks for the question. If we got any more here, jump in. If I missed you, go ahead and retype in your question and I'll jump up because I got behind when I was going through the plays and fades. There's a couple questions I think I probably missed in there. If I did, go ahead and jump in there and I'll put them in there. I don't think I got to this one all in one show. PPR, you're saying you'd go Zay and JJ. I like that move as there's a couple other trades questions. I appreciate everybody jumping in the chat, helping out everyone with their trade questions, jumping in, giving your advice. I always think that's great when we get people in the chat helping each other out, kind of giving their opinions. Sometimes it's just good to bounce stuff off people. Sometimes you just need to see what a couple other people think and if it's kind of in line of what you're thinking. So I always appreciate bouncing questions off anybody. Let's see if I just looking back here, see if there's a couple more, if there's anything I missed. Oh, here's the question. That was Christian's question. Was trade Amon-Ra and Tillman for Zay and JJ redraft standard scoring? Yes, I agree with all in one on that one. I would make that trade. I'd much rather have Zay and JJ in a standard redraft. I think those guys have big play potential. Amon-Ra I like a lot, but I like Amon-Ra in PPR leagues. He's the guy that's going to load up on catches. Tillman has had a nice little breakout. If I can trade him for someone that's big on him or has like a Jameis Winston and they want the combo, I'm moving Tillman, especially in redraft. I don't see any more questions. If you guys got any more, jump in here real quick before I close up shot here. We thank you for joining us here on Shoot the Gap. Jorge apologizes. He had to run off there real quick. Had the the baby needed some attention. So we all know how that is when you've got a young one in the house. So we appreciate him taking the time and jumping on, our fearless leader. If you haven't yet, please get on, subscribe to us, leave us comments. Feel free to always jump in. If you're on X, hit me up on X at JT Orange. I'd be happy to answer any questions, trade questions, start sit questions, especially IDP, but I play in every type of league. So if it's Dynasty, it's redraft, it's any of that stuff. Feel free to jump on there and ask me those questions. We appreciate you helping us, joining us here on Fantasy and Frames Wednesday night, closing out the night with the late night IDP show. Make sure you check us out. We've got fantasy content for everything from college to hockey, redraft, Dynasty. We have gambling content. You can check out my shows, The Stew with JT Brew. On Tuesday night, I do a college football betting show. And then I do during the day, usually on Thursday, Friday, we'll do an NFL betting show. And we have our DFS show. So if you are like a daily fantasy guy, you play those shows. We've got a great show on Friday with some experts that'll help you pick your DFS lineup out. So make sure you check those out. Thank you to everybody who jumped in tonight and joined us for the show. We appreciate it. We'll check you next time here on Shoot the Gap on Fantasy and Frames.